Hello everyone. Today we're going to start a unit on trigonometry. The lesson objective for today is students will be able to identify and label the parts of a right triangle, the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse. So here's your title for today, Intro to Trigonometry. Trigonometry is the measurement of triangles. The trig ratios relate the sides of right triangles to their angles. So if you remember a few lessons ago, we learned about right triangles. They had a hypotenuse and they had two legs. We left it at hypotenuse and two legs. Now they have particular names, the legs. They're either an opposite or an adjacent. Copy down this table, well, this diagram into your chart. I want you to notice that depending on which angle is labeled, the sides kind of switch around. The hypotenuse is the longest side. That hasn't changed. It is also the side that is opposite the right angle. The hypotenuse is the longest side, and it is the side that is opposite the right angle. So I'm going to highlight the right angle in blue, I'm sorry. And if we go directly across from the right angle, we're going to see the longest side, the hypotenuse. The opposite is the side across from the labeled angle. So when you're approaching a trig problem, they're going to have an angle that they want you to find or that they want you to use to find something else. This is what I refer to as the labeled angle. And the labeled angle is here in yellow. Here it is, here it is. And if you go directly across from the labeled angle, you're going to have the opposite side. So opposite the angle is the opposite. Opposite, opposite, okay? Opposite means across. Lastly, the adjacent is between the two labeled angles. What two angles? The right angle and the labeled angle. The labeled angle looks like a pizza pie, so I might refer to this as it's between the pizza pie, well, the pizza slice and the box. Adjacent is between the slice and the box. The slice and the box adjacent. It connects the two together. Now we're going to learn about the three trig ratios. The first one is called sine. Sine is equivalent to opposite over hypotenuse. So sine is the ratio of the opposite side to the hypotenuse. Cosine is the ratio of the adjacent to the hypotenuse. And lastly, tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now for my class, these formulas will be on your formula sheet. However, once you move up to pre-cal, they're gonna expect you to kind of know this, and it's not gonna be on the formula sheet any longer. So I'm gonna show you an acronym that my teacher showed me like 15 years ago when I was in geometry myself as a student, and I still remember it. So it's called SACATOA. That's the way you can remember the formulas. The S stands for sine, the C stands for cosine, and the T stands for tangent. The O is, of course, opposite over hypotenuse. Sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. CAH, the C stands for cosine, the A for the adjacent, the H the hypotenuse. So cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And lastly, tangent is equal to OA, opposite over adjacent. So whether you want to memorize the formulas or remember SACATOA, it's up to you. So today we're going to do just a really like low level introduction to trigonometry. We're going to be really focusing on just labeling the parts of the triangle, okay? So for example 1, it's stating label the hypotenuse, the opposite, and the adjacent in the following triangles. So I like to start with the hypotenuse. That's the easiest to find, and that's the one we have the most experience with because we learned that last semester. So remember, right across from the right angle, that's the hypotenuse. Next, you find your labeled angle. Across from the labeled angle is going to be the opposite. And lastly, in between the labeled angle and the right angle is the adjacent. The adjacent is just the one that's left over, honestly. Let's look at another example where it's kind of flipped around. Let's look at number 5. Here's my right angle, go across, there's my hypotenuse. Here's my labeled angle, go across, there's my opposite, and between my pizza pie and my box, the leftover side is my adjacent, okay? So the most important thing that you have to know how to do when you're working with trig is you have to be able to label the sides opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. If you mislabel them, everything from this point forward is going to be incorrect, okay? Let's take it a little bit further and look at example 2. Example 2 states, find the sine, cosine, and tangent of angle C. So we're going to want to draw this into our notes, okay? And they're telling us to use angle C. So we're going to have to put a marking here on angle C, okay? Step 1 is going to be to label the triangle. Let me get a different color. Here's my right angle. Go across, that means this is my hypotenuse. Here's my labeled angle, go across, that means that's my opposite. And then the leftover one between the pizza pie and the box is my adjacent, okay? So first thing I want is sine. The sine of angle C is going to equal opposite over hypotenuse. That's my formula for sine. Sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, sa. Sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. So if we look at what we have labeled here, we labeled the opposite as 24. Well, we label the side that has 24 as the opposite. So the numerator of this ratio is going to be 24. The hypotenuse is here, and that side is 25 in length. So in the denominator, I'm going to put 25. Therefore, the sine of angle C is equal to the ratio 24 over 25. Cosine of C, cosine, the formula is adjacent over hypotenuse. Here the adjacent is labeled 7. The hypotenuse is still 25. So my answer for cosine is 7 over 25. Lastly, the tangent of angle C is equal to opposite over adjacent. My opposite is 24. My adjacent is 7. So that means that the tangent of angle C is 24 over 7. So we have 3 trig functions, sine, cosine, tangent, and we have 3 ratios. Step 1 is just to make sure you label them all correctly. If you label them correctly, it's just a matter of substitution. Substitute what the opposite side is, what the hypotenuse is, and what the adjacent is. Sometimes you might have to simplify. So for example, if you had 10 over 20, you have to simplify that into 1 over 2, okay? 10 over 20 would not take as the answer. But in this example, there was no simplification necessary, but just in case there is, make sure you're checking if the fraction is in the simplest form. So that's all I have for you today for intro to trigonometry. Like I said, it's very basic. The focus of today is just making sure that you can label those sides and fill in the formula. Have a good one.